Case 1. Pope John Paul I. In 1978, Albino Luciani became pope. He wasn't supposed to. When journalists asked about his chances before the vote, he said he ranked on the D list of candidates. He took the name John Paul I, and the press called him the Smiling Pope. A laborer's son, warm, humble, elected in a single day. Then he looked at the books. The Vatican Bank was laundering money for the mafia through Italy's largest private bank, Banco Ambrosiano. The operation was overseen by Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, the bank's president, alongside banker Roberto Calvi and convicted fraudster Michele Sindona. All three were connected to Propaganda Due, a secret Masonic lodge run by a former SS officer named Licio Gelli. On the evening of September 28th, 33 days into his papacy, Luciani called his Secretary of State, Cardinal Villot, to his study. He told him Marcinkus would be removed from the Vatican Bank. Cardinal Cody of Chicago would be replaced. Several officials linked to the lodge would go, and Villot himself would be let go. Villot didn't take it well. Everything was set for the next morning. But the next morning, Luciani was dead. A nun found him at 5:30 a.m., his hands resting on his chest. His nails had turned dark. The reading light was still on. She said he looked like a man who'd fallen asleep reading. The Vatican told the press his secretary found him, not a nun. They said he'd been reading The Imitation of Christ. It later emerged there wasn't a single copy of that book anywhere in the Vatican. No autopsy was performed. Vatican law classified it as a desecration. Every person Luciani planned to remove the next morning kept their position. Marcinkus was reappointed to the Vatican Bank by the very next pope. He stayed for another 11 years. Case 2. Roberto Calvi. The Archbishop Marcinkus didn't just stay. He had a business partner. In 1975, Roberto Calvi had become chairman of Banco Ambrosiano, Italy's largest private bank. His father had been a banker. Calvi was a banker. It was supposed to be the family legacy. Instead, he turned it into a laundry machine. Working with Marcinkus, Calvi set up shell companies across Panama, Luxembourg, and Liechtenstein. The Vatican Bank issued official letters of patronage, vouching for these companies. Foreign banks trusted the Vatican's word and lent the money. $1.4 billion of it. It went to the mafia, to P2, and to right-wing militias running covert operations across Europe. In 1981, police raided the villa of P2's leader and found a membership list. 962 names, parliamentarians, military officers, a future prime minister, and Roberto Calvi. Calvi was convicted of illegally exporting billions of lire, released on bail. He wrote to Pope John Paul II warning that the collapse would provoke a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions in which the Church will suffer the gravest damage. No response. On June 10, 1982, Calvi vanished from Rome. He shaved his mustache in Venice, picked up a fake passport under the name Gian Roberto Calvini, and flew to London on a private jet. In his briefcase, incriminating documents and a one-way ticket to Rio. He never made the flight. On the morning of June 18th, a postal clerk crossing Blackfriars Bridge noticed something underneath the scaffolding. It was Calvi. Orange rope around his neck, 5 bricks stuffed into his pockets and trouser legs, $14,000 in 3 currencies still on his body. The first inquest ruled suicide. Then forensics looked again. No brick dust on his hands. He never touched the bricks. No paint on his shoes. He never climbed the scaffolding. Someone else put him there. The location wasn't random either. P2 members called themselves Frati Neri, Italian for Black Friars. Calvi was found under Blackfriars Bridge. 5 people were charged with his murder, including a mafia boss already serving life. After 20 months of trial, all 5 were acquitted. The Vatican paid $244 million to the bank's creditors. They called it a goodwill gesture. They admitted nothing. Marcinkus retired to Arizona. He died in 2006. Never faced trial. Case 3. Emanuela Orlandi. In 1983, 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi lived inside Vatican City, not near it, inside it. Her father worked for the pontifical household. The family had an apartment within the walls. She sang in the Vatican choir and took flute lessons 3 times a week at a music school in Rome. On June 22nd, she left for her lesson and never came home. She'd called home that evening to mention a job offer. A man in a green BMW had offered her work distributing cosmetics flyers. A witness saw them talking near the Italian Senate. Then anonymous callers began demanding that Italy release Mehmet Ali Aka, the Turkish gunman who had shot Pope John Paul II, in exchange for Emanuela. On Christmas Eve, the Pope visited the Orlandi family personally. He told them, "The case of Emanuela is a case of international terrorism." He assured them the Holy See was doing everything humanly possible. They weren't. For the next 40 years, the Vatican maintained what officials called strict silence. They refused to open their archives. They refused to cooperate with Italian police. They denied possessing any file on the case. In 2012, the Vatican's own chief exorcist publicly alleged that Emanuela had been kidnapped for sex parties organized inside Vatican City, involving a Vatican gendarme and foreign diplomatic staff. That same year, police opened the tomb of Enrico De Pedis, a Magliana crime boss who'd been buried with full honors inside a Roman basilica. A cardinal had authorized the burial for $1 billion. An anonymous tip linked De Pedis to Emanuela's disappearance. Inside the tomb, nothing. In 2019, 2 more tombs were opened inside the Vatican's own cemetery, both empty. In November 2024, 41 years later, the Vatican's chief prosecutor finally admitted a confidential file on Emanuela exists. They still haven't released it. Her brother Pietro has spent his entire adult life fighting for answers. "We will never resign ourselves to the disappearance of my sister." Emanuela Orlandi is still missing. Was it the Turkish? Kidnapped for sex parties? We don't know. Case 4. Spain's stolen babies. In 1969, a woman gave birth at San Ramon Maternity Hospital in Madrid. Hours later, the nuns told her the baby had died. She asked to see the body. They brought one out. It was ice cold. It had been dead for weeks. It wasn't her baby. The hospital kept a frozen infant corpse in a freezer to show to any mother who asked questions. Her real baby was alive, already handed to another family, a Catholic family, an approved family. They paid 200,000 pesetas. This wasn't one hospital. It wasn't one doctor. It was a system. It started in 1939 when Franco's military psychiatrist, Antonio Vallejo Nájera, convinced the regime that Marxism was a genetic disease. He called it the red gene. His prescription? Remove babies from left-wing mothers and place them with loyal Catholic families to stop the disease from spreading. After the political enemies ran out, the system kept going. Unwed mothers, poor families, anyone the Church and Vatican deemed unfit. Catholic hospitals across Spain ran the operation. Nuns identified the mothers, doctors falsified death certificates, priests kept waiting lists of approved buyers. It ran for over 50 years. The estimates range from 30,000 to 300,000 stolen children. In 2011, a BBC documentary exposed the network. Over 3,000 families filed lawsuits. Only one case ever went to trial. Dr. Eduardo Vela, the gynecologist at San Ramon. The court found him guilty of abduction and forgery, then acquitted him. Statute of limitations. His defense? "I always acted in God's name." 3,000 cases filed. 0 convictions. The judge who first investigated, Baltasar Garzón, was himself prosecuted for investigating Franco-era crimes. The Spanish Catholic Church has refused to open its files. No compensation, no national DNA database. As of 2025, the bill to classify this as a crime against humanity is still sitting in Parliament. Case 5. Father John Geoghegan. In 1962, John Geoghegan was ordained in Boston. A psychological assessment had already noted his very pronounced immaturity. The church ordained him anyway. Over the next 30 years, he molested at least 130 boys across 6 parishes. He targeted poor families, broken homes, children with nowhere else to turn. His youngest victim was 4. In 1980, he admitted to molesting 7 boys from a single family. He said he did not feel it serious or a pastoral problem. The boy's aunt wrote to the church, "I do not believe he is cured. His actions strongly suggest he is not." The church didn't respond. When Cardinal Bernard Law took over in 1984, he was briefed on the complaints. He sent Gayagan to therapists, but told them only about 6 complaints. The real number was at least 15. The therapists cleared him. Law used that clearance to transfer Gayagan to St. Julia's Parish in Weston and put him in charge of 3 youth groups. One of the children at that parish was Patrick McSorley. He was 12. His father had just committed suicide. His mother was schizophrenic. Gayagan showed up at his home and offered to buy him ice cream. On the drive home, he molested him. In 1989, Law wrote Gayagan a letter. "It is most heartening to know that things have gone well for you and that you are ready to resume your efforts with a renewed zeal and enthusiasm." All of this was policy. A 1962 Vatican document, Crimen Solicitationis, instructed bishops worldwide to handle abuse in total secrecy. Victims who spoke out faced excommunication. On January 6, 2002, the Boston Globe published results of an ongoing investigation into the archdiocese. Over 500 victims, 248 accused priests. In Boston alone, Law resigned. The Vatican appointed him Archpriest of the Basilica di Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome. He lived there until he died in 2017, never prosecuted. Gayagan was convicted and sent to prison. In August 2003, another inmate strangled him in his cell. McSorley, the boy from the ice cream trip, never recovered. A friend said the settlement money gave him a means to buy drugs and escape the pain. He was found dead in a friend's apartment in 2004. Drug overdose. He was 29. Case 6. The Rat Lines. In 1948, a man walked into the church of Santa Maria dell'Anima in the center of Rome. His name was Franz Stangl. He had been the commandant of Treblinka, the Nazi extermination camp, where an estimated 900,000 people were murdered in just over a year. Inside, Bishop Alois Hudal was waiting for him. He looked at Stangl and said, "You must be Franz Stangl. I've been expecting you." Hudal was running what Allied intelligence would later call a rat line, an organized escape route that moved Nazi war criminals out of Europe through Rome and into South America. And it ran through the Catholic Church. Here's how it worked. A war criminal arrived in Rome. A priest or bishop would meet them. The Vatican provided forged identity documents. Red Cross travel papers, issued on the Church's recommendation, gave them a new name. Then they'd hide in a monastery or Catholic safe house until a ship was ready. Buenos Aires, São Paulo, Damascus. Stangl got his papers from Hudal, stayed in a Vatican-connected safe house, and boarded a ship to Syria. He eventually made it to Brazil. He lived there freely for 16 years, but he wasn't the biggest name on the passenger list. Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, escaped through the same system. Forged Red Cross papers under a fake name. A ship to Argentina. He lived there for a decade before Mossad agents pulled him off a bus in Buenos Aires. Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon, went through the rat lines too. He had tortured French resistance fighters and deported children to Auschwitz. He made it to Bolivia. 32 years of freedom. Josef Mengele, the Auschwitz doctor who performed experiments on children, escaped through Italy to Argentina. He was never caught. He drowned on a beach in Brazil in 1979, a free man. Declassified documents confirmed that Allied intelligence reported the rat lines to Vatican officials as early as 1947. A memo from the American Embassy in Rome described the Vatican as the largest single organization involved in the illegal movement of emigrants. The Church's response was not to shut them down. These men were anti-communist, and to the Vatican, stopping communism was more important than punishing genocide. In 1967, Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal tracked Stangl to a Volkswagen factory in Sao Paulo. He was arrested, extradited to West Germany, and convicted of co-responsibility for the murder of 900,000 people. In a series of interviews before sentencing, journalist Gita Sereni asked Stangl about his guilt. He said, "My guilt is that I am still here. I should have died. That is my guilt." He was sentenced to life imprisonment. 19 hours after his final interview with Sereni, he died of heart failure in a Dusseldorf prison cell. The Vatican has never formally apologized for the ratlines. Bishop Hudel retired quietly to a villa outside Rome. No priest, no bishop, no Vatican official involved was ever punished by the Church.